श्री स्वामीनारायण भगवान नि जय, अक्षर पुरुषोत्तम महाराज नि जय, प्रमुख स्वामी महाराज नि जय, महंत स्वामी महाराज नि जय, प्रमुख स्वामी महाराज शताब्दी महोत्सव नि जय. Today's session will begin with G12, which is from pages 325 to 326. So after Swamishri had finished his traveling, he carried on his traveling and he came to the village of Pipadao. Because all the villages over there had wished that Swamishri would inaugurate the newly constructed water tank. All the villages over there, they wanted Bapa to come to inaugurate this tank. And it's just very interesting to see how Pramukh Swami Maharaj was so revered by people all over that even for an event like this, they would actually request Bapa, Pramukh Swami Maharaj, to come to the village just for the inauguration of a water tank. Now around this time, an individual from the time of Shastriji Maharaj, who was very acquainted with Shastriji Maharaj, had decided to publish a book claiming to explain the philosophical principles that were revealed by Shastriji Maharaj. Now when Swamishri came to know about this, he actually advised this individual, saying that, it would be good if the book were published only after consultation with seniors in the Sanstha, just in case, to make sure that there were no mistakes and to make sure that it was corrected before it was published. So this is the advice that Pramukh Swami Maharaj had given. However, this individual, he very blatantly chose to disregard Pramukh Swami Maharaj's advice, and instead he just set in motion the process of the publication. Now as soon as Pramukh Swami Maharaj found out about this, he wrote a letter of caution to that individual. And Pramukh Swami Maharaj was very respectful in the way he wrote it, but at the same time he was also very stern. And we can see from the text, which we'll read right now, that Pramukh Swami Maharaj, a true leader, in the way he actually wrote this letter. To the dearest of devout, the most senior, beloved of the Pragat Param Pujya Purani, and he gives his name, and Pujya B. Please read the dearest and warmest Jai Swami Narayan of Shastri Narayan Swarup from Pipadao. Specifically, we had discussed and decided regarding publishing the book and had it called off. Yet you have published and prepared that. Having received this news, I am deeply saddened. Even now, if you leave this insistence and duly think about this matter, it will be good. Raising unnecessary quarrels is not good. Nevertheless, if I become responsible and am forced to do so, it does not suit me nor you. So before I become bound to do anything related to this, please send an appropriate reply to me in Mojidar. I have neither sadness nor any problem in the praises of Shastriji Maharaj being said and sung. And there would not be any wish on my side against that. It is not as if it is unsuitable, but my sole intention is that you publish it with the assistance of and with the agreement of the seniors of the Sanstha. So please write to me an appropriate reply. Please convey my Jai Swaminarayan to all the devotees there. Now we can see that this person had blatantly disregarded Pramukh Swami Maharaj's wishes, and he was going against the grain or against the wishes of the seniors in the Sanstha. And so Pramukh Swami Maharaj took the responsibility of actually putting that person into place and making sure that he didn't falter in that. Swami's letter was affectionate but very, very firm. It said that leadership should be gentle enough so that other people do not get walked over, but should also be firm enough so that other people do not walk all over. Now, Swamishri always treaded in this way. Very balanced approach in the way he did his leadership. Now, even more interesting to this aspect of this letter was that the person that had actually initiated this whole scenario, or the person that Pramukh Swami Maharaj had written a letter to, was the same person that had tried to poison Pramukh Swami Maharaj many years earlier. Pramukh Swami Maharaj had completely forgotten it and forgiven that person. On the contrary, he had actually treated him very, very kindly and with a lot of respect throughout. Yet this person chose to take such steps. And so Pramukh Swami Maharaj, wanted to make sure that he took the steps in the right way, but at the same time didn't want to hold anything against this individual. So Swami's letter was purely out of concern for the sanstha and that person in particular. So we can see he's very, very forgiving. He would never remember such heinous acts that had taken place against him. However, he was not going to stand for anything that was aimed against Shastriji Maharaj's sanstha or the philosophical principles of the sanstha. Let's move on to G13. During Pramukh Swami Maharaj's travels, there was a devout Bhakta by the name of Ganesh Bhakta. He lived in Mojidad. Ganesh Bhakta was blind and was spiritually very, very wise. He had a lot of Guru Bhakti towards Shastriji Maharaj and immense friendship with Yogi Bapa. But now he was counting his final days. And Ganesh Bhagat had asked Yogiji Maharaj that when I leave for Akshardham, I would like to do it in your presence. I would like you to be present during my final days. And so Yogiji Maharaj had actually arranged for a Parayan on the Harilila Kalpataru in Mojidad. Yogi Bapa was also present at that time. And Yogiji Maharaj had actually requested many sadhus from Mumbai to come one after the other and also participate in this event. But everybody, all the villagers had wanted Pramukh Swami Maharaj to also be there to give the final touch for the Parayan and the festivities. So Pramukh Swami Maharaj had to change his vichran, and with his sevak, he boarded a train from Ahmedabad to Surendranagar and then to Chuda. Now they got to the station in Chuda at around 8:30 p.m. The day happened to be a national holiday, so things were rather quiet. There was no one over there on the station at that time. And unfortunately, no vehicle had come to collect Swamishri. But without making much of a fuss, Pramukh Swami Maharaj found another place, and they ended up spending the entire night opposite the railway station, outside a closed electric deanery. And Swami slept on the bare ground at that time. Now remember, Pramukh Swami Maharaj had only taken 1 cup of avocado that morning. And so the whole day was almost like a fast. That was the only meal that he had in the morning. So the whole day, Swami had ended up fasting. And that no place to sleep as well. The next morning, a vehicle happened to arrive at the station. The vehicle actually come to collect some Hari Bhaktos from Botad. Now, Pramukh Swami Maharaj then realized that, they realized that they'd actually forgotten Pramukh Swami Maharaj. So Swamishri then hitched a ride to Mojidad in the same car. Now, to the surprise of the organizers, they just realized their big mistake, that they'd actually forgotten to send a car to come and pick Pramukh Swami Maharaj up, and that the fact that Swamishri had actually spent the whole night at the station without any other comfort or anything like that. And so everyone there because they got so engrossed in the festivities, they'd completely forgotten about this whole thing. And so they all apologized to Pramukh Swami Maharaj. Bapa didn't make a big fuss about it at all. No big deal, didn't tell anybody anything off. Normally people would be up in arms, just creating a huge fuss about it. But Pramukh Swami Maharaj totally just let it go. Not only that, in fact, he calmed everybody down, explaining to them, look, it's not your fault. Things like this will happen. And it's understandable that you got so involved and engrossed in all this. But again, Pramukh Swami Maharaj very calmly took care of the situation. Now remember, this was Pramukh Swami Maharaj. He was the main speaker of the Parayan on this day. And this is why they actually invited Pramukh Swami Maharaj. But they had forgotten about Pramukh Swami Maharaj. Now while the Parayan was still in progress, that's the time when Ganesh Bhagat very peacefully passed away on the auspicious day of Ekadashi, on the 18th of August. Yogiji Maharaj had fulfilled his promise. Yogi Bapa and Pramukh Swami Maharaj eventually performed the final rites of Ganesh Bhagat. The Parayan was then concluded on the next day. Now, as per Ganesh Bhagat's wishes, the entire village was told not to cook at home. They were going to arrange the food from the sanstha. And so this was Ganesh Bhagat's wishes, and so that was arranged accordingly. Now, prior to this event, Yogiji Maharaj had written letters to all the Hari Bhaktos reaching all over that please come and have the final darshan of Guru Maharaj, Ganesh Bhagat. So Yogiji Maharaj was also much aware that these were the final days, and we can see, true to his word, Yogiji Maharaj finally came to take Ganesh Bhagat to Akshardham. Let's move on to G14. Pramukh Swami Maharaj was once in Sarangpur, and in an early morning while he was doing his puja, normally Swami would do his puja in the Sabha Mandap, which was just outside Shastriji Maharaj's room. There was a pillar, the first pillar outside Shastriji Maharaj's room. That's where Pramukh Swami Maharaj was doing his puja. Now a young boy, around probably 8 years old or so, was running around, and he was actually racing for Yogi Bapa's darshan. But not realizing that Pramukh Swami Maharaj was doing his puja, he raced past Swami's puja, and his leg got caught into Pramukh Swami Maharaj's, the asan that Pramukh Swami Maharaj was doing, the puja asan. And he pulled the asan. Not only that, also the murtis were all scattered everywhere else. And so he realized the blunder that he had made, and the boy just stood there frozen. Pragat Bhagat, who was Pramukh Swami Maharaj's sevak at that time, he was also doing puja nearby. And he was very quick to, he lost his cool and quickly told the kid off. And immediately Pramukh Swami Maharaj stopped Pragat Bhagat, called the boy very affectionately and comforted him. He said, look, don't worry. It was dark and so it was difficult for you to see. Carry on. Go and see Yogi Baba. I know you're rushing to go to Yogi Baba's darshan, so I'll let you go. Immediately he turned to Pragat Bhagat and very warmly explained, okay, look, he's just a little boy. He was probably running around. So things like this happen. There's no need to scold him. This 8-year-old boy was so touched by Pramukh Swami Maharaj's response and love and affection that eventually this same young boy eventually became a sadhu. Many years later, Pramukh Swami Maharaj gave him Diksha named Akshar Jivan Swami. Many of us in the UK might have remembered that he was accompanying Pramukh Swami Maharaj in 1988. And he's also the composer or the writer of many, many bhajans. We've heard Swami Amare Anga Tamaranga Dhodi Do, Bhagwan Sonu Bhalu Karo, Bhagwan Bhaji Leva, Pramukh Swami Amrutni Heli, Sadguna Sagar, Pramukh Swami Vandan Karu, Shiranami, Saunare Prana Pramukh Swami Maharaj. All these bhajans, they were written by Akshar Jivan Swami. But just one small gesture from Pramukh Swami Maharaj was enough to impact somebody's life and make such a huge change. Let's move on to G15. While Swamishri was traveling, Hakabai Khachar was also traveling with Pramukh Swami Maharaj during his vicharan. And unfortunately, one day, Hakabai received the news that his mother had sadly fallen ill. Now, Hakabai was the only child, and naturally he wanted to be there during her final days. So thinking that it was her final days. So once he went up to Pramukh Swami Maharaj and he opened up. And he said to Bapa Swami that I've received the news that my mother's health is not well, she's not doing too well. I'm the only child and I feel that I should be there during her final days. And it's natural for anyone to feel this way. And Haka Babu thought that Pramukh Swami Maharaj would actually send him home. But Swamishri, with a lot of conviction, Swami said to him that who's going to take your mother to Akshardham? Only Yogi Bapa would be able to do that. So don't worry, nothing's going to happen to her. And with these words of comfort, Pramukh Swami Maharaj kept Haka Bapu with him. And this is exactly what happened. Haka Bapu's mother, her health recovered. In fact, she lived on for another decade after that as well, in a very healthy condition. Eventually, obviously, as time came about, we can see an image of Haka Bapu. Haka Bapu was a very close friend of Pramukh Swami Maharaj. But nevertheless, Haka Bapu carried on his vicharan with Pramukh Swami Maharaj. And it did happen so that during her final days, Haka Bapu was still traveling in other areas, and he wasn't there to witness or be there when his mother finally passed away. But Haka Bapu was able to manage his emotions at that time and accept the loss of his mother. Let's move on to G16. Now, Pramukh Swami Maharaj was the president of the Sanstha with so many other responsibilities, always busy with meetings and all other things, Padramnis. But he also had a very incredible ability to create time for people and to be able to connect with them. Sometimes it's so easy to get caught up and stressed out with work. But for Pramukh Swami Maharaj, he always seemed to find time for people. We often say that Pramukh Swami Maharaj's number one project was people. And that's why he was always able to make time for people. In fact, he had the ability to make situations very, very light and keep everybody fresh all the time. And that was his personality, very amicable, very approachable, and always available for people, always able to engage with people. Now, once during his stay in Gondal, Pramukh Swami Maharaj was busy giving prasad to everybody. And there were some santos and some parshads nearby as well. And so everybody was around Pramukh Swami Maharaj. And while Swami was giving prasad out to everybody, the santos actually encouraged Bapa and they said, Swami, why don't you have some too? And so Swami took a slice of orange, the fruit, and then he gave the rest of the orange to a young parshad by the name of Ramji Bhagat. Now, in trying to encourage Pramukh Swami Maharaj to take some more, the sevak who was there said to Bapa, Swami, why don't you eat some? The parshad has, he'll be able to take some other stuff. He'll be able to have some more, he has teeth, and daat che એટલે બીજું ખાઈ શકશે. પણ તમારે તો દાંતમાં પણ તકલીફ છે, so it'll be nice for you to have something soft like this. So Pramukh Swami Maharaj then looked at the parshad and he says, કે તારે દાંત છે? do you have any teeth? And the Parshad, the Ramji Bhagat nodded. He goes, yes, Swami, Mare Daat che, I have some teeth. And Pramukh Swami Maharaj says, can you see your teeth? And so the Parshad says, na, man daat nat dekha tha. The Yogi Baba says, then how can you say you have teeth if you can't see your teeth? And the Parshad says, well, I look in the mirror and I know that I have some teeth and I can feel my teeth. And Pramukh Swami Maharaj says, what if the mirror is deceptive? He's just, again, there's a lot of banter and a little bit of a jest over here with Swami and this Parshad. He says, well, what if the mirror is deceptive? And so the Parshad, he says, well, Swami, whatever you say, I still have some teeth. Swami said, then Swami gave a very nice analogy. He says, well, yes, the teeth are there, but sometimes daat dekhata na hoy toy apanne manai che ke daat che. Even though you can't see certain things, we accept that we have the same thing, that we have it, that it's there. Similarly, one should have faith ke Bhagwan che ne che. Bhale dekhata nathi, pan Bhagwan apni sathe che. And that's the kind of faith that we need to have. So again, while he was joking, at the same time, Swami was able to engage with Haribhaktos, Santos, Parshads and share profound messages as well. Yogiji Maharaj and Pramukh Swami Maharaj then carried on with their Vichran. They left Gondal. They went to Sarangpur to celebrate the Jaljini Ekadashi. Now that year the rains had been delayed. It was very, very poor. Yogiji Maharaj had asked everybody to offer extra prayers and to do dhun for 45 minutes during the night sabha every single day. And that night again on Ekadashi again, Pramukh Swami Maharaj, Yogiji Maharaj insisted that we should all do dhun. Yogiji Maharaj and Pramukh Swami Maharaj then left for Botad. Now in Botad, Swami had performed the stone laying ceremony for a new Hari Mandir that was going to be built in Botad. They celebrated, then they went back to Sarangpur. They celebrated Shastriji Maharaj's Shrad in Sarangpur. And then they carried on their Vichran. The Vichran went into Jhalawad. They reached a village called Wagad. Now this is where Shriji Maharaj had visited this village almost 3 times. And Bhayatmanand Swami had actually stayed there for 30 years. So it was another very prasadinogam. The next stop was Morasya. Again, Bhayatmanand Swami had also, this is the place where Bhayatmanand Swami had been cremated. So we can see Pramukh Swami Maharaj's endless Vichran just carries on relentlessly. Let's move on to G17. This was a very special year because this whole year and the next 63, 64, where they were actually going to celebrate the Shatabdi Utsav of Shastriji Maharaj. Just like we're celebrating Pramukh Swami Maharaj's Shatabdi celebrations. Similarly, back then, they were all celebrating Shastriji Maharaj's Shatabdi celebrations. So again, a lot of festivities, a lot of preparations going on. Pramukh Swami Maharaj, eventually he made his way to Gondal to celebrate the Sharad Punam Utsav, which was marking the 180th birthday celebrations of Gunatidhan Swami. And then from Gondal, Pramukh Swami Maharaj carried on his Vichran. It was decided there, in Gondal, that the Shatabdi celebrations would take place in Atladra. This was a decision that was made. So from Gondal, Pramukh Swami Maharaj carried on his travels. He went to Sarangpur to celebrate the Ankut festival over there. The Ankut festivities in Sarangpur. After that, Pramukh Swami Maharaj then traveled to Atladra. Now Swami would repeatedly go to Atladra because that's where the festivities were going to take place. And there Swami just had a meeting over there and decided where to keep the Sabha Mandap, where to keep the kitchen, and all the other facilities for the centenary celebrations. Now Swamishri's presence just gave so much energy and pace to everybody over there in Atladra. Eventually, Swamishri made his way to Ahmedabad. From there, he went to Jetalpur, Vasod, Dabhan, Vidyanagar. Again, the Vichran just carries on. Finally, they arrived in Bochasan to celebrate the Kartik Punam festival. 10,000 people had visited Bochasan that time in November to celebrate this Utsav. And the following day, Pramukh Swami Maharaj then began a Parayan. The Parayan was on the second skand of the Harilila Kalpataru. Again, this took place in Bochasan. Now again, a meeting took place over here regarding Shastriji Maharaj's centenary celebrations, and it was decided to invite the President Radhakrishnan, President of India, to the festival, and that 5 members from the committee would go to Delhi to invite him. Yogiji Maharaj instructed Pramukh Swami Maharaj to go to Delhi and then give the invitation to him. So then Pramukh Swami Maharaj, after completion of the Parayan in Bochasan, Pramukh Swami Maharaj went to Vadodara. From Vadodara, Swami went to Mumbai. And from Mumbai, they flew to New Delhi. So this is their flight to extend an invitation to the President of India for the Shatabdi celebrations. Let's move on to G18 now. Now on the plane, Dr. Swami was also there, Swayam Prakash Swami. Dr. Swami was also on the plane. And so, Dr. Swami narrates a very interesting incident that took place with him on the plane. This was the first time that he was taking a flight. So reminiscing their moments on the flight, Dr. Swami wrote many years later that it was my first time aboard an aeroplane. And I remember being very eager to see the view from the window. However, Pramukh Swami Maharaj was sitting on the window seat, at the window seat. And so, unable to contain my curiosity, I kept leaning across Pramukh Swami Maharaj to try and catch a glimpse below. And then suddenly, Pramukh Swami Maharaj stood up. And instead of becoming irritated by my constant obstruction, he simply took my hand, gently sat me down in his seat, which was next to the window. He gave up his seat and Pramukh Swami Maharaj took another seat. It was one of the first times that I had experienced Swamishri's remarkable ability to understand the wishes of others. Not only understand, but also extend to great lengths to fulfill those wishes. Something that really touched Dr. Swami, and he penned it in one of his articles over here. As a result, Dr. Swami developed a very high level of respect for Pramukh Swami Maharaj, and he strengthened their bond accordingly. Let's move on to G19. On 24th of November 1964, Pramukh Swami Maharaj met the President of India, Dr. Radhakrishnan. Now, with him was Pujya Dr. Swami, the personal secretary Gulzarilal Nanda, and Kishorbai Gadia. So they were all accompanying Pramukh Swami Maharaj. The meeting was scheduled to be only about 5 minutes. But the conversation, because they were so engaged and Pramukh Swami Maharaj, the president wanted to listen to more, it lasted for about 20 minutes. And Pramukh Swami Maharaj spoke to him about the Sanstha, about Shastriji Maharaj, about the Akshar Purushottam Upasana, and extended an invitation to the president. The president then expressed his wish that yes, he may come to the event in Atladra, and he would inform them about the program later on, within a week. Then after extending the invitation, then Pramukh Swami Maharaj left Delhi for Mumbai by train. During the journey, there was one passenger who was with them as well, and he started talking about some other Hari Bhaktas in Satsang and had a very negative tone to his work. At that time, was full of Abhavagun. So Dr. Swami, imagine in the presence of Dr. Swami and Pramukh Swami Maharaj. But Pramukh Swami Maharaj was always very averse to such talks of Abhavagun. And so he gave no credence to him, and he just didn't listen, completely disregarded the conversation, paid no attention to him. Let's move on to G20. So after coming back from Delhi, Pramukh Swami Maharaj again was fully engaged in the Shatabdi preparations for the Shatabdi celebrations. And his Vicharan carried on. Along with the Vicharan, Swami would have to go back to Atladra for meetings. Again, the Vicharan would carry on. They were expecting and planning for almost 100,000 people for the Utsav at that time in Atladra. So again, the meetings just would carry on. Swami would meet district officials to make arrangements for such a large-scale festival, and just to make sure that they had support from the local government as well. So similarly, Pramukh Swami Maharaj was Vicharan. He would carry on doing some Vicharan, come back to Atladra, have more meetings. Once, after the meeting, Pramukh Swami Maharaj carried on his Vicharan, and he went to Nar to meet Yogiji Maharaj. Again, this was something very interesting because he would make sure that Yogiji Maharaj was completely kept up to date with all the festivities and the preparations that were carried on for the preparations accordingly. So, despite all the physical stress of the Vicharan and the mental stress of the meetings and everything, but Pramukh Swami Maharaj had an incredible way to balance all this. Let's move on to G21. Swami was, after his Vicharan, Swami finally came to Atladra, and he spent almost 2 months in Atladra. He was there from 11th of January till March the 3rd. This is 1965. Fully involved from start to the wind-up. Swami was there throughout the festivities. Ishwar Charan Swami was witness to this, and once he remarked very nicely, he said that Pramukh Swami Maharaj was so engrossed in various preparations for this festival that he did not even see what time of day or night it was while performing his seva. He completely forgot to eat and drink, to rest and sleep. Wherever work was going on, he was there to give inspiration to the leaders and the volunteers for hours, leaving only after the work was complete. The work for the Sabha Mandap continued throughout the entire night, right up to the morning of the day of the festival. But Pramukh Swami Maharaj did not budge from that place. Everyone repeatedly assured him that they would get up only after work was complete. However, only after the wall for the back of the stage was constructed and painted by early the following morning did he finally get up from his place to bathe and get ready once again to be present in the assembly hall. And Yogiji Maharaj would often ask, has Pramukh Swami Maharaj eaten or not? But Pramukh Swami Maharaj would always say, would always be somewhere else on the festival site, walking around directly under the scorching sun. Mota Swami would not eat until Pramukh Swami Maharaj would come. So finally, Pramukh Swami Maharaj would have to come back, drop everything and come back to eat and leave all the work behind. Otherwise, Mota Swami would have to go hungry. The enthusiasm for seva and devotion could be seen in every pore of his body. An attachment for the body could not be seen at all. This is what Puja Ishwar Charan Swami said about Pramukh Swami Maharaj's celebration, the way he celebrated Shastriji Maharaj's Shatabdi Utsav. Let's move on to G22. Now, one night during the preparation, one of the nights leading up to the festivities, a truck full of mattresses unexpectedly arrived at around 2 a.m. The truck needed to be unloaded. Now, all the volunteers were asleep, and Pramukh Swami Maharaj saw the truck. He wasn't going to wake any of the tired volunteers up to unload the truck. So he asked the driver if it was possible to just spend that one night and leave in the morning once the truck was unloaded. And he explained that everybody was asleep. However, the driver was in a hurry to return, and so he insisted that the truck should be unloaded immediately. Now, everyone was asleep. So Satyapriya Swami, who was there, he suggested that we should wake some of the yuvaks up. But Bapa, he said, look, everybody must be exhausted. Let's not wake them up. Let them sleep. And then he told Satyapriya Swami, why don't you climb on top of the truck? You hand over the mattresses one by one, and I'll pile them over here on the ground. And this is exactly what happened. Satyapriya Swami climbed on top of the truck. One by one, he would hand the mattresses to Pramukh Swami Maharaj. Pramukh Swami Maharaj would pile them, and the two of them gradually unloaded the entire truck and sent the driver away. And it's just like any parent who would sacrifice their sleep for their children. Pramukh Swami Maharaj must have sacrificed so many nights and so many sleepless nights like this on so many different occasions for his santos and Hari Bhaktos. So this is another thing that we can see in the life of Pramukh Swami Maharaj. We will end today's session over here with G22, and we'll carry on with G23 in the next session. Shri Swaminarayan Bhagwanani Jai.